Hi, I'm Diane. I'm the Chief Leadership Officer at Blueprint Leadership, and I know all of us are going through a tremendous amount of change right now, whether that's learning how to work from home more effectively, how to lead people remotely, how to take care of children while we're working at home, or being concerned about elderly parents that may need our assistance. So I've put together a short presentation to help us with 3 tips on how to navigate more effectively through change. Listen to the presentation. I've titled this presentation, Dealing with Change, Adapting to Life in the Now. And I'd like for each one of us to think back over a situation where we experienced change. For many of us, that change was something that happened suddenly. It's not something that we welcomed or wanted. And that's what we're facing right now across the world. We have this coronavirus. Nobody, or very few people, anticipated it coming, and none of us want it. And yet we have to learn how to navigate through that change. One of the things that happens with change, of course, is that a lot changes. We have 26 million kids out of school in America. That's the last number I heard. A lot of public places are closing down, sporting events, bars, theaters, etc. And lots of organizations are having to adapt. For example, restaurants are doing drive-through service as opposed to having guests inside of their facilities. Businesses are also changing. Businesses are either reducing hours or staggering hours in order to have fewer numbers of people at one place at one time. And people, as we all know, are working from home. I actually just went to Best Buy and I couldn't find a headset because so many people are anticipating how they're going to function better at home, working from home. And, we're finding also that even change is changing. So, for example, at first we were told that we should limit the number of people in any one place to 250. And that changed, and the number was 50 for a time. And then just recently, the president announced that we should try to limit the number of people to 10. And of course, this is all for good reasons. We want to try to do our part to reduce the exposure that people have to the coronavirus so that we can, what they call, flatten the curve, have fewer people that are exposed and fewer people sick at the same time. And this, of course, as I said, is a world issue. So how do we adapt to this change? The change that you had gone through personally before the coronavirus, or changes that you have gone through in your work environment, require the same kind of process as that we'll now have to implement in managing through the coronavirus. So I want to walk you through a 3-step process that we'll use in order for us to manage change. That's change in ourselves and also as leaders helping other people through that change. That will be, those other people are people in your family and they're people in your work environment. So the first step is transparency. Now, in order for us to really connect with people, they need to know that we care about them and that we understand. When change happens, a lot of times people ask the question, well, what impact will this have on me? And the emotional response can be that fear, flight kind of response. And so we can't logic people through their emotional response, their questions about how it's going to impact their future. What we need to do is rest in that moment to help them understand that we know what they're feeling, we know what their concerns are, and we can empathize with those. So for us to truly know, we have to listen. We have to understand from their perspective. We need to be compassionate with the feelings that they're going through so that they know we care about them and we understand. So one of the first things that you can do to be effective in leading others is to really connect with people. Stop, listen. Spend at least 70% of the time listening and don't give advice. Just help them to know that you care and understand. The second step in our change process is that we want to be able to influence. And in order to do that, we need to have the right mindset. I have a coach, a mindset coach, her name is Diane Grant, and she recently said that fear is the worst virus. We cannot panic. And I think she's right. The physical virus of the corona will pass away, but if we overreact in fear and we start hoarding, we start overcompensating in many different ways due to the effects of the virus, we will create long-term consequences that are unnecessary. And so one of the things that we need to do as leaders is to really understand and be educated about the coronavirus, and then also be educated about how we can mitigate the consequences of that through our organizations and the missions of our organization. So we need to be educated. Secondly, we need to understand reality. We do need to know that we're a global economy. Other countries are going to affect our economics, that customers will be probably tightening their belt, and that's going to have an effect on our businesses. Employees are going to be nervous about how they manage their families, their kids being out of school, their finances. And that we all need to be aware of what we can do to make sure that we're minimizing the amount of exposure that we personally have to the coronavirus, and making sure that we're not passing it along. That's reality. But in order for us to be realistic and yet calm, I think there's a couple of things that we can do, a couple of tools to be aware of. One is we want to make sure at this point, once people feel like they are understood and we care about them, we can start to move people along the change curve to get back in touch with the whys. Why do we exist as a corporation? What is our mission? How do we stay true to the purpose of the organization, even though we have these obstacles in front of us? Or as a family, what are we trying to do? We're trying to create kids that go out into the world and they have great character and they make a difference. So how do we navigate through this, relatively short term in the lifespan of a person, the short term obstacles that we face to accomplish that higher purpose? So tip number one, let's not lose track of the bigger purposes for what we're trying to accomplish with the challenges that are happening right now. It's very easy to get caught in the weeds. Secondly, as leaders, we want to, at this point, really minimize as much ambiguity as we can. And that means that it's our role to put some structure in place. The more ambiguity there is, the more that people need some type of structure. So if you can help create, timelines and goals and workflows that help people understand, to provide more clarity, it will help people not be overwhelmed by the amount of change that's taking place, which there's a great deal of change right now. And so when you put those structures in place, you're going to be creating new habits and new routines. So it's important to realize that whenever there's new, it takes a little bit of time for people to adjust to the new. So give some grace, give some flexibility as people are navigating all of this new change and coming along the change curve from that initial sense of fear and concern and worry and what about me, what about my family, what about my finances, to starting to figure out how am I going to manage through this change in a productive, effective way. Now, as you're moving toward this opportunity to begin to influence people along that change curve, A couple of important things are that you're making adjustments. So one aspect of this is making sure that you're removing obstacles that exist, that you understand what those obstacles are, and you're helping to eliminate those obstacles, that you become part of the solution with your colleagues at work or the people at home. And what you want to do is, in addition to the task part of what we're trying to accomplish, you be cognizant of now at this point beginning to inspire commitment, hope, support into the environment to help people realize, yes, we're going to get through this. And we want to be able to get people involved. Once they're past that initial fear and concern, and then they're starting to come along the change curve to saying, how can we solve problems? That at that point, you want to get their involvement and empower them to be part of the solution. And so when they're ready, when their mindset is at the appropriate place to start moving forward, then you want to be able to help them to be part of the process of creating success. Now, it's really important as we think about moving people along the change curve is to understand that every person is unique. And so the more that we understand each individual, and that means understand ourselves and understand others, the better we are able to connect with them and influence them in ways that matter to them. So one of the things that we teach at Blueprint Leadership is the 8-step process, and we call it signature strengths, the 8-step process to identifying what makes each person unique. What are their signature strengths? In that process, we talk about, well, what are their goals? And then what do they believe and what do they value? And then how do they like to communicate? And what are the passions of their heart? And finally, what are their greatest skills? And when we can go through and identify what makes a person unique in each one of those areas, then it gives us the opportunity to leverage the strengths of each individual in helping them to move forward in the change process. So for yourself, think about, what is it that you're trying to accomplish in the next, years period of time? Like, for example, where do you want to be on December 31st, 2020? We call that your 2020 vision for 2020, right? And then what are the values and the beliefs that you have and that you want to hold conviction around as you move through and navigate this change? And then how do you like to communicate? What are the passions of your heart? What are the strengths that you bring? And that self-awareness is going to be pivotal for you to then be able to think about others and in that same model, the 8-step process of signature strengths, so you can identify the uniqueness of them, and that will help you to help them navigate through the change. So as we talked about, there's this 3-step process. The first is connecting with people. They need to know that you care and understand. The second step is how do you influence people? And that means that you're deploying those tools I talked about in the context of the uniqueness of each particular individual and help them to move from the place of fear and concern to a place of, I know that I can handle this and I can navigate this change. And then the last step is action. We need to have impact. So I want to talk about 4 areas in particular that we can be aware of with the coronavirus around how we can take action to have impact. The first is each of us is responsible for all of us, right? And so we need to take care of ourselves and then from there move the circle of influence out. So it's ourselves, the people closest to us, our family, our colleagues and our neighbors, and then out from there, our communities, our city, our state, our nation. And each of our responsibility that we take care of ourselves and our own health and then that we take care of others near us. And that includes doing all the things that the EDC and the WHO, our healthcare professionals and our president and government are telling us to do. You know, we can't understate the importance of things like washing your hands thoroughly, making sure that you're disinfecting your cell phone and your computers and any of the surface areas that you frequent most often, right? Taking those steps to take care of yourself, it means that you're also taking care of others. Secondly, let's not neglect people that are important to us, the most important to us at this critical time. I feel like this is actually a real opportunity where we have family time, and that we take advantage of that family time for us to create deeper relationships, for us to create better, some memories that will last a lifetime. And so I don't want to underplay the seriousness of all the external factors that are taking place right now. And yet there is a silver lining in that this is an opportunity, I feel, for us to push the pause button and really invest in the things that are most important. And that is relationships with people who are closest to us. Third, I want to remind us that we are a nation that is resilient. We have faced adversity time and time again. And throughout history, our identity is that we come together, that we take care of each other, and together we overcome every obstacle. And this is our moment for our generation to really come together as a nation to overcome this threat, the coronavirus, as a nation, as one. And so I invite all of us to think about the character of our identity as a nation and to step into it at this time. And what that means, and last thing I want to talk about, is that it means that we don't blame. Blame is not a solution. What we need to do is come together in unity with hope and taking the proper actions to cause us to come together as one instead of being divided as we've been in the past decade or more. So again, there's silver lining in this difficulty and this challenge. And in the silver lining really has to do with identity of ourselves and who we are and our character, identity of our families and bringing our families together to create cohesion and togetherness, expanding that out to our neighbors, our cities, our nation, and coming as one to overcome this obstacle and this challenge, this adversity, and come out the other end stronger. Leaders, it's our responsibility to bring this kind of faith, this hope, and the action to make it happen. So in summary, we need to be limber right now. We need to adapt to the changing circumstances. And there's 3 steps that you can take as a leader to help people that are close to you, people that you care about, navigate through this change. Number 1, connect with people. They want to know that you care and understand. Number 2, influence. The way that you influence is by implementing the tips I talked about and making sure that you're implementing those tips in the context of who each individual is uniquely. And then third, taking action so that you can impact the people that you care about and expand that out into the neighborhood, your business and work environment, your cities, your states, and our entire nation as we come together as one to overcome and be stronger as a result. Thanks so much.